Hello and welcome to the Black Advancement. I'm your host / moderator, Ajiman Jasante Goodman. On the screen with me, I have Shanice Goodman. On the upper side, I have Greg Goodman. On the other upper side, I have Dwayne Robbins. Below me, I have Brandon Coney. I have Lauren Whitaker. I have Danielle Robinson. Robbins, do the last name. Never mind, she'll get into it. Don't worry about it. And I have Mike Gardner all the way at the bottom. And we are the Black Advancement. Today, we're going to do the topic of Black grade school teachers. Before I get into that, let me tell you what the nonprofit's about. The Black Advancement Incorporated is a nonprofit organization that looks to combat problems within the Black community through action and dialogue. Before we get into the topic, let me talk about the front street for the topic. Depending on where you grew up or are growing up at right now, the chances of you having no Black grade school teachers can be high. Many of the people I know, and myself included, can count how many Black school teachers they had on outside of higher learning on one hand. Although most of us did not suffer from not having a Black grade school teacher, there was a void noticed whenever you were fortunate enough to interact with one. With the undeniable fact that teaching is one of the most important professions in the world, we felt obligated to ask the question of whether Black grade school teachers save the destruction of the Black community. So with all that being said, I'm going to go into the first question. I'm going to give it to Greg first, since he's the veteran on this whole crew. Is it pivotal to have Black grade school teachers in the educational system for Black students?
I would say absolutely yes. And I can't even tell you the benefits, because I literally had no Black teachers at all in elementary school. I don't think I had one Black teacher until high school, or seen one Black teacher. No, until middle school. And that was late in middle school. But yeah, I think it'd be important to see somebody who looks like you in a leadership capacity, especially at that young of an age. You know, that gives you a bigger picture as to what you can become or what you can do with your life at that age, especially since in elementary school, literally the only thing that you learn about as far as Black people is during a couple of weeks in February, and all they tell you is Martin Luther King and you were a slave, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So the benefits that we had is we were taught at home a lot of our own history, so we knew a lot more than most kids that don't have that opportunity, or parents don't teach them or let them know about who we are and where we come from and how we're in the position we are today. So to see somebody that looks like you in a position of power, leadership, and understanding would definitely benefit Black kids.
Dwayne, you go ahead next.
Yeah. I mean, it's important for children to see people that look like them. I was just going through my head trying to figure out when I had a Black teacher, and it probably wasn't until, like you said, middle school, and I think it was Mike's mom. To be honest with you, I think she was the phys ed teacher at West Frederick, and so I think she was the first Black teacher that I remember having. So
yeah, I never had a Black teacher though. That was just the first time I saw. I never had her.
I apologize for being so blessed. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. because I mean, like I said, when I think it was your mom, Mike. It was my first teacher that I remember. So I mean, I think it's very important for establishing for kids to have confidence and who you can just go to. You feel more comfortable going to people that look like you, especially when you're a child. That's my feeling toward it.
Mike, as you were aforementioned, go ahead.
Yeah. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So for me, I remember this one instance where the lack of a cultural understanding kind of played into the part, because some of Black kids and I were in the back cracking mama jokes And the white teacher like, oh my God, go to the office and get suspended.
Mm-hmm.
And going to the black teacher, and the black teacher joining in with us. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where that lack of cultural awareness can really be detrimental to black kids. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely. Shanice, go ahead. And then after Shanice, you guys, whenever you feel comfortable, just go ahead.
All right. I'm 100% and for black students having black teachers. One, just to be advocates for them. There's so much black teachers can bring to the school building and to a school body, especially those student bodies that don't look like them. The teachers don't look like the students. They can advocate for them. They can not only do they get to see some representation of them, and they can do so much for students of color.
Why are you looking at me?
I'm sorry. I'm not normally like oh man, I'm not like a speaker, but
You're fine.
So yeah, I think black teachers can be pivotal for black students. They can, like I said, they can represent their representation, they're advocates. They can talk when the students can't talk for themselves. They can change things. They can change the way other teachers look at them, and also like research shows, like if they're black students, they're 13% more likely to go to college. Two, it increases to 27%. So there's a resource that supports that black teachers are pivotal, especially in the climate that we have now, all the stuff that's going on with racism and black people getting a voice. It's so important that black teachers are there, not only teachers, administrators, school counselors. We need to be all up in the mix. So it's not just teachers. I think we need to be there advocating for our students, because if you think about the achievement gap for African American students, one of the reasons why in this country that we are so far behind is because we lack diversity in our teaching staff. We lack so there's so much that a black teacher can bring in just into the mix that it's not only important. I think it's really detrimental that we don't have.
Yeah. I just have a question. I'm having a hard time hearing y'all. I don't know if is it just me? I mean, it seems like
it's
not just you.
Yeah. So what the issue is, and I spend 8 billion years, what it feels like anyway on Zoom, is that whenever the person is speaking, if there's anybody else who's got any other type of background noise going on, that's what's causing it. So one thing that can help, and Aj, I hate for hijacking your program here, that whenever you're not speaking, just put your on mute, and then that'll help drown out the background noise.
Oh, by the way, anybody can go now between you three, because I wanted to get the.
I wanted to hop in really quickly, because first I want to say my name so that I'm sorry, Danielle.
I didn't want to mess it up.
No, it's Danielle Robbins Shakuma, and I want to make sure, out of respect for my husband and his people, the Igbo people from Nigeria, I'm always, I always like to give credit where credit is due. But I agree with everything that has been said thus far. The importance of having representation anywhere is always important. But if we start off in the educational system, it makes a big difference, not just for Black children, but for other children, right? Because as someone who's taught at the collegiate level and then working every day in corporate America, if a student has had someone who's looked like me along the way, they're not so surprised when they come into a meeting that I'm running, or when I'm the person who makes the final decision. It's not something that they'll second guess if they've had teachers, if they've been taught by someone who looks like me along the way. So that's why it's so important to what Shanice said for the diversity factor, especially for our kids, but for other kids as well, because then they know, like, well, yeah, I understand a Black woman leader. A Black woman taught me. I had more than one Black woman teacher who really showed me all these different things. And it's that lack of having those different experiences from different people teaching you a lesson that leads to corporations being run by the same exact type of person. It leads to other industries being dominated by white males or or whenever someone who looks different comes into play, then everyone's like, oh wow, oh wow, I can't believe that this has happened. If we have diversity from the get-go, and young children are learning that, hey, this Black woman here, this Black man over there, they are my favorite teacher. They're the ones who teach me math. They're the ones who teach me science. Then when you get older and have to interact with others, you're not surprised, or there isn't a gap anymore. So if we don't make the changes at that level, it won't permeate anywhere else, because school and education is the foundation of all industries, because you have to learn somewhere and from somebody.
Lauren, Coney, whichever one wants to go first.
Well, I think what we have to look at is not only just the representation is kind of a piece of it, but I think that we have to really work on the perpetuation of whiteness. So when we have Black teachers, but then they are not empowered in any sense of the word, and they're just like a figurehead in their the places that they work, then that is not necessarily dismantling the problem of just having the Black teacher. So you need to have some sort of, and I think that's essentially what we're kind of working towards, but really figuring out how we're telling the complete and more accurate history that is reflected of the world in America, of how, you know, people of color do, it's not just some, you know, something that we talk about in February, but actuality, they are incorporated throughout the entirety of the American history story. So yes, representation is 100% a good part of it, but I do think that we need a bunch of different things that we as a country need to work on to do the education system better. So.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everybody said thus far. I've been fortunate enough for the last 3.5 years to work at a all-Black school. We're 99% Black. We serve, it's K-5 elementary school located in Pittsburgh. It's the Urban Academy. We're fortunate enough to have 100% Black administration. 62% of our teachers are Black. If you look at our overall staff makeup, we're almost at 70% Black. And I see how kids react to having not only Black teachers, but Black administrators, you know, Black janitorial staff, Black specialists, like everybody at our school. And I mean, obviously, you know, we're not 100% Black as far as the staff makeup goes, but it makes a difference for these kids. A lot of our kids will leave our school and then they'll end up going to, for the most part, a majority school. And they come back and have conversations with us, whether that's when they start 6th grade or even whether or not, you know, they're getting ready to graduate from high school. And they talk about the importance of not only having a Black teacher, but to points that other people have made, having a Black CEO, having a Black principal, having several Black teachers, having your K-2 instructional lead being Black, having your 3-5 instructional lead being Black. You know, things of that nature, because it plants the seed, as both Danielle and Lauren attributed to, of seeing Black people in positions of power that ultimately help shape their mind. And so that when they get older, it doesn't hit them as much of a shock. But then also, like I'd mentioned beforehand, about them being proud or them being happy to have gone to what we call an all-Black school. We're 99% Black. We're actually 7% Black. We have one Native American go to school. All the rest of our kids are Black. But in any case, being around people who look like you and being around people who are teaching you, who help make the educational decisions for you, is important for these kids, because they'll leave our school, they'll go to a majority school, and once they've left us, they have a sense of understanding of where they come from. Like, we don't teach our kids that, like they do in most mainstream schools, that when you start talking about Black people, most people learned about Black people starting with slavery. And then, you know, we spend a lot of time in February talking about different important people during the civil rights era and whatnot stuff. At our school in particular, and we are Black focused, we're a science, technology, robotics, engineering, arts, and math school, but we are Black centered and Black focused. That's part of our charter. But we teach kids where they came from. your life or your history didn't start with slavery. Your life and your history started as you being kings and queens and rulers of not only a continent, but also of the world. And imparting that foundation on these kids is very important, especially with a lot of the things that are going on in today's day and age. And for me personally, I can count on one hand how many Black teachers I had, but all of my Black teachers, to this day, I remember all of them. I remember their names. I remember the lessons they taught me, whereas I can't say the same thing for all of my white teachers that I had. I literally had 5 Black teachers from, first one I had was in 5th grade, Miss Cobb. I had one in middle school, Mr. Bradley, and then I had 3 in high school. But all 5 of them literally, to this day, I took something from what they taught me. I took something from the things that they said to not only me, but to other students as well, too. So I think that it's paramount and important to have Black teachers, Black administrators, people who look like you in positions that'll help you grow.
Yeah, I believe I only had like a substitute, I think that was Black, for like a week. I'm not talking about people who were like administrators and stuff like that, but I'm talking about people who actually taught me. I don't think I ever had a Black teacher, like as I came to their class every day, and that was my teacher. I never had that as the rule of the day for me personally. Guy on the couch, we're gonna go to the website real quick to see what people have said outside of here. Guy on the couch, what do you have as far as comments go?
All right, question number 1. Is it pivotal to have Black school teachers in the educational system for Black students? Each one teach one is in line with the rest of the panel. He or she says, yes, I believe it's important for Black students to see themselves represented by both male and female teaching staff in schools. The perspective Black teachers can bring into the areas of curriculum, teaching style, creativity, and cultural representation can have a huge impact. There are ways Black teachers can relate to students that other teachers can't. Black teachers are also needed to be advocates for Black students. The educational system has its biases and is not necessarily set up for us. We need to be on the forefront as administrators, teachers, counselors, and support staff, fighting for and teaching our students. Back to you.
Thanks, Guy on the couch. That was good. Does anybody have anything to add to the comments that were made from the website?
Yeah, I would like to say that I think it is also important that we work with teacher educators as well, that we're teaching because like I said, we do need to do a lot more work in terms of getting Black teachers out there, but we also need to be doing more work to teach white teachers as well more about how to not be racist in their teaching. And so that is important to do as well when we're thinking about all of this. We cannot be absolutely everywhere.
Do you have examples of something like that going on? Do you have any personal examples of something like that?
Well, the environment that I was educated in as a child, it was a lot more diversity, and a lot of my white teachers were more aware of teaching in a more culturally responsive kind of a way. I think my experience at HBCU was very different in that there were, a lot of Black teachers there, but there were also white teachers there as well. So I think that I just think that we have to do all things. Yeah, that's I don't know how to articulate it that any differently. I just think that we have to do that for all teachers, is that work on not being racist in your teaching. Let's work on that.
And I 100% agree with that, because I am a Black teacher at a mostly majority white school. I'm one of 2.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's part of what I do as like a rep. I'm a rep for a cultural proficiency rep, and our job is to make the white teaching staff aware of implicit biases, and we're trying to give them books to read and resources to support, like this is culture responsive teaching. So in some districts, that can be done, but in other districts, I feel bad because that's not being done. To educating white teachers, they're okay with the way things are going, and they don't see a need to change because it's not.
That's the problem, though.
Yeah, and that's So it's just trying to change hearts and trying to change minds that this isn't working for us. So it's a big task at hand, and I 100% agree. We need to have teachers out there, administrators out there pushing for change because it needs to happen.
Anyone else on this subject?
I have something to say because it's not a secret that a lot of minority kids get suspended at a higher rate than the white kids, right? But how much of that is just from not understanding how Black kids operate or how passionate they can speak, or just that cultural misinformation that's not necessarily interpreted well in a white environment. Whereas if you had a Black teacher who come in, like, you know what I mean, really talk to them at their level and get that message across, and now instead of having a 10-day suspension, now you just redirected the kid and you're back on track. You know what I mean? So how much of that gets in play in those numbers that's not being reported? When we're talking about in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and then that can really have a negative effect in the long run on a child when you're getting suspended because the teacher's not understanding you. And now you're missing classes, you're failing, and then now you're getting directed into a lesser, I guess, harder class. You know what I mean? You can put into those special education classes because you're deemed as a problem child, or you're deemed as, you know, somebody who has issues, mental issues, or whatever the case may be, just because you don't have nobody who can advocate for you or just understand, you know, your environment or where you're coming from. So that's just my thought when I think about that. Because I was one of those kids where I was hyper. You know what I mean? I was like, you know, mama jokes this, mama jokes that, and you know, if I didn't have a Black teacher to step in for me, you know, I would have been getting my ass whipped every day. But you know, it's just it's just one of those things that if you just have somebody to actually understand you, maybe you wouldn't be, you know, in trouble as much, and that can kind of dive into another realm. So I don't know, just my thought.
Yeah, I'll say me and Mike are on the exact same page with that, because I always had, once I got older, I always had I guess it was a theory, or what my understanding to be was, a lot of kids get started off on the wrong track because of teachers. Now, most elementary school teachers, at least when I was growing up, most of them are white women. And white women are generally taught to fear Black men. So when a young Black child does get emotional or into a different space of energy or whatever, then they tend to overreact all the time because that's what they're taught to fear. So that's another reason why there has to be more diversity and more understanding, you know. And I'm not using that as an excuse. It's just something that I've always theorized, because I remember as a kid, I used to always get punished way more harsher than the other white students that were doing the same things that I was, for the most part. So, and I didn't come to that realization until I got older that might have been a part of it. I don't know how real that is, but it's real to me. So.
Yeah, I think it's very important to talk about implementing a culturally relevant pedagogy, especially to the Shanice's point about teaching your white counterparts what it's like to be Black, what it's like to deal with Black children, what it's like to interact with them. One of the things that we do at our school is, for the first 10 to 15 minutes of every single day, we spend that with time with our kids to talk about how their day was yesterday, or how their evening was the night beforehand. So you can get a gauge or an understanding of where they may be in their current headspace today. The thing that I've always said time and time again with a lot of our kids, with a lot of the problems they end up having, or prior to them getting the problems, is, are you hungry or are you sleepy? And generally speaking, I would probably say about 95% of the time, you address those two issues with our kids, and that will quell any problems that they'll have throughout the rest of the day. And, you know, just talking about how important it is, even in 2020, of having conversations with white teachers about what it's like to teach Black kids. You would think that we wouldn't have to have these conversations. I've seen it personally, to where we had one teacher in particular at our school who, going through everything, and in essence said to her kids, you know, Malcolm X was a violent man. In essence, she stopped short of calling him a criminal and a murderer, but ended up going through what she knew about Malcolm X, or how she was taught about him, as opposed to how everybody else saw him. And that goes back again to the importance of teaching white people, one, how to teach Black kids, but two, how to connect and relate to Black kids. I mean, because the school to prison pipeline is 100% real. And another thing that doesn't get talked about a lot with Black kids in particular, and me and my colleagues were looking at a study that was done as related to this, but not only with Black kids, but you also have to look at the colorism aspect as well, because darker skinned kids are punished at a higher rate than lighter skinned kids are. And then you have to go into, you know, the standpoint of going back decades and centuries as it pertains to back to the slavery times, where you had your field slaves versus you had your house slaves, and then also creating the disconnect or the discord that exists between the slaves. You're light skinned, you know, you don't necessarily know what you're talking about. You in a house with master, whereas you're dark skinned, you out there in the field, I'm not listening to you either. Those disconnects still exist to this day, and they're continuing to be perpetuated in a lot of different systems, but especially in our educational system as well.
I'm going to use this break right here to go ahead and plug the website, which is www.blackadvancement.com. For all of the people who are on here on this panel or who are watching, when you get a chance to, if you don't feel comfortable espousing your own opinions or writing your own opinions in as far as any of these questions or comments goes, we have a research section on the website where you can go to the tab, and there's literally articles. We try to do it from as many different angles and sides of the issue as we can possibly, so that you can make yourself more aware of the issue. We also have a topic section, which anybody can participate in. You can write in suggestions for the topics that you think that we should have as overall topics, or maybe subtopics within something, such as Black grade school teachers within the role of education. So you could also contribute that way. Also, we do events, you know, everything from fundraisers to bar mitzvahs. We're all over the place, really. The only thing we're missing is our own balloons, and I think we're working on that, I think. Anyway, so with all that being said, we'll go on to the second question. Are you more or less comfortable with the idea of you or your child having a Black school teacher, or does it matter? I know that we've kind of addressed this already, but this is a free-for-all. Anybody can start, anybody can finish. Go ahead.
So I have a lot of experiences. So let me ask, so when I was in Urbana Elementary School, I had an afro, despite what it may look like. And I remember.
Hold on, Mike.
I had an afro, but it was like, and I remember taking a test and just kind of like just there, and the teacher literally pulled my afro back and get my head back. And I was just like, and I went home to my mom. My mom couldn't believe it, and she kind of like now that thing happened, and that whole year was just one incident after the other. And I don't ever want my kids to experience that. You know what I mean? Like just the racial undertone, the racial, you know, it's just everything that goes with that. I don't ever want them to do that. I still remember her. I'm not gonna say no name, Miss Fan Hall. But you know, you know, I still remember that. I still remember it like it was yesterday. And I don't ever want my kids to go through that. So is it a black parent, a Black teacher that understands them and loves them like I do, I'm all for it.
Mike, you brought up something that I want to touch on. If you guys can put this into some of your answers, like the dynamic of you telling your parents what happened and it comes into this lane and their reaction to it. Were they more on your side or were they more on the school side? I mean, like, I don't have to ask Greg that question so much.
because it was teachers, they didn't believe me, actually. And I remember feeling so angry and just so upset. And it was almost like this year just kept getting worse, and then they took me out after all the complaints and took me back into South Frederick. So, and when I went to South Frederick, you just saw a whole different shift because I had, you know, if it wasn't Black teachers, there was a lot of teachers who were, I guess, Black friendly, so to speak. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? But yeah, so it was a different experience. And I don't ever want my kids to have to deal with that ever. So.
I have a quick question, Mike. When you were at Urbana, that was in the G&T program, right?
I don't remember. Yeah.
Oh, okay, because I mean, there was so much at play with that because I've had a similar experience while in the Gifted and Talented program of teachers doing what they could do to move Black children out of the program. So there was a whole lot of stuff going on there. If that was happening as well, yeah. I mean, I would love for my kid to have always have a Black person who influences them and is their teacher. I mean, that's the biggest game changer for me was when I got to middle school and I had your mom was there at West Frederick. Your mom was there. I had Miss Charlton, who's now Miss Concepcion, and of course my mom was across the way at Frederick. So there were enough people there that, you know, I knew a lot of teachers who weren't Black. They kind of knew not to go too far because there were enough teachers there to advocate. I mean, if there's even more, I think it makes the experience that much. It makes the experience that much easier for students. But I think it causes, as a result of there being a lack of Black teachers, it causes parents to look differently at where you take your child to school. Living in LA right now, that's one of the big things that my friends and I are looking for. Our children are all in Black preschools right now. We're looking for a elementary school that we all can go to right now, so that where we know there are a critical mass of Black teachers, and that where we can get on the PTA and kind of take over. Like, so these are because we want our children to have advocates. So I think it's extremely important to, you know, I want CJ to always have a Black educator. I mean, of course, his first educator is me and my husband. So of course he will know Black educators from that perspective, but I want someone else who is not just mommy and daddy who can help continue to, you know, help evolve his perspective in life. And it's good when you have people who look like you, who've had similar experiences, you know, helping to shape young minds.
To piggyback off both those comments, and I agree 100%. And I'll go ahead and go out on a quote unquote limb here and say that I venture to say that the majority of us when we were growing up, we had parents who always took the side of the teacher, regardless of what was happening and whatnot. So, I mean, I can say that's the case for myself, and I know some of you speaking with you, that was the case. Whereas now in today's education system, or at least from what I've witnessed, it's the complete and utter opposite. And it makes it difficult because nowadays you contact a parent and say, hey, your child was doing X, Y, and Z, instead of the parent's response being, you know, how can we work together to make sure this doesn't happen again? The parent's response is, well, what did somebody do to my child in order to make them react that way?
What is, let me interject real quick. Like, what is it? So what is the answer in that one? Where's the medium ground in that of not helicopter parent overly involved, but like a parent investigating without being too, I guess, too accusatory, so to speak?
So in my personal opinion, what it comes down to, and it's something that Danielle hit the head on, is the fact that she's an active parent. She's not relying upon the school to take care and raise her child. And I think that that's the big disconnect that I've seen thus far with parents nowadays versus parents beforehand. So to answer your question, the middle ground is you accepting responsibility for the action that your child did, you asking the teachers and or the administrators, you know, from that standpoint about, let's talk about their day. Let's talk about what got them to that point, instead of saying what was done to them to make them act like that. And I'll give you an example of a child throwing a chair across the room, hitting two students and also hitting the teacher with the chair. and you call home and say, hey, X, Y, Z happened, and the parent's immediate response is, well, what did you all do to my child to make them throw that chair? Whereas the answer, the response should be, that is completely and utterly unacceptable. I will have a conversation and I will deal with my child. The response I always got was, my parent, don't worry about that. You won't have to worry about that anymore else or any longer at all, ever. My child, Brandon, will be on his best behavior from here on out. You don't have to worry about that. But something along those lines, as opposed to immediately going to bat for your child. And I think that a lot of people go to bat for their child because, truth be told, a lot of these parents today, they're not teaching their kids values at home. They're not teaching them anything at home. And I can't say a lot. I'm just speaking about some experience that I've been through, is that I think that's the biggest disconnect or the biggest discord between when I was a child versus when, kids now are in school.
I also hear you saying that there's a general mistrust for each other as well.
Correct.
So the parents are saying, even though I send my kids to school, it's not that I trust your behavior, that you're an upstanding individual and you're a Black person, you're going to support and love my kid. They have distrust for you as well. And so I think that is even more of important of just like, yeah, we're just Black people, we've got your kids, but it's like, yeah, but we also are now working together to trust each other and work to raise each other. Right. So I think all of these issues, I always think about the whole system of how things occur and happen, because why is it that the parent feels that they shouldn't be able to trust your judgment as an educator and a professional? So that's a good point as well. I'm sure your school is lovely.
Thank you. But to that point, you hit the nail on the head of further conversation we ended up having because of this, is that we realize that these parents are products of a school system that didn't care about them. They had to go through a lot of the same issues that we had to go through, but also from the same standpoint is that these parents are products of a school system that truly did not care about them. And so they have a general distrust towards authorities when it comes to school. And so that's always been the tight balancing act that we've had to juggle, is understanding that, some of our parents did not have the same type of parents that we did growing up, teaching them values, instilling into them the importance of education, and also letting them know that they are of value because they're a Black child and they're a child of God. They may not have had that. And then on top of it, you go to a school that ultimately is just there to churn kids out from year to year to get them out there, get them out as quickly as possible. So some of our parents still do have that distrust towards the educational system in and of itself, because it was an educational system that was created by white people for white people to educate white people.
Yeah.
Like white boo-boo.
Or some of our parents grew up through a time of segregation. So they had Black teachers that cared about them and they knew, and so their trust in teachers will be different for such as, again, like Brandon said, if they weren't treated fairly, they're not going to automatically take the teacher's side. And then they're going to side with their child because they know how they were treated. So you have to think about the generational change. Our parents, they went to all Black schools, some of them segregated in the South, and they had great teachers. And so their trust in the education system is greater than younger generations. So, and most parents are young. They're like, yeah, so.
Dwayne or Greg, y'all got anything to add to the convo?
Yeah, I'll just go ahead. I'll try and make this as quick as possible. But to answer the original question of what we were speaking on, yeah, I would definitely love for my children to all have Black teachers. Just so they can have, just so I know that the teacher will have that understanding of them, and in a deeper level than just the student, because that part is just as important as the actual education. To me, the nurturing part is just as just as important as the actual learning and of all the subject matters that need to be covered. Now, just to tell a story about going back in the day as far as dealing with teachers. Now, I feel like if I had better teachers when I was in elementary school and middle school and all these things, then I'd probably be in a better place in life. Now, like I told you before, a lot of these teachers, when I was young, I was treated a lot different than most of the other students. One, I was one of the few Black kids, and the Black kids that were there, most of them were mixed. So I was definitely pretty much the only speck of pepper in that salt shaker most of the time. So, but on top of that, what I didn't know when I was young, I didn't find this out till I was like in 11th grade, is that I had a learning disability. So I would have difficulties and troubles in school. So it was very frustrating most of the time, but the teachers had zero understanding for that. And on top of that, at the time, because, and this is not my parents' fault at all, but what I was following up while going to school was my older brother, who was borderline, he was basically a genius. So it would be hard for my parents to understand. It would have to be my fault because my older brother went through the same thing, the same school system, and was killing it. I mean, killing everything. We're talking about a dude who got all A's except for one B in math. Not math, but one B in art.
Yeah, it was art. It was art.
Yeah, he got a B in art. He got a B in art. He was like 12 years old taking calculus, getting A's. But he art.
What did I say? What's this B about? What's this B about?
Yeah.
Look, I've been there.
Yeah.
One less phone call, that B could have been an A.
But the point being is, I feel had I had a teacher that would have actually realized, because we all, well, some of us all went to church together, and like Dwayne and Danielle's mom, she taught me in Sunday school, so she knew I was very smart, but she understood that I had a disability, but we didn't go to the same school. I don't know if she knew it to that extent because we didn't go. Our time was broken up a lot, but she realized that I was very smart. My parents realized that I was very smart, but they didn't realize the whole learning disability thing. And I feel like if I had a teacher that actually cared halfway, then that would have been taken care of when I was really, really young, and they would have noticed all the signs.
Not to mention that I don't ever remember like learning disabilities like when we were coming up. Like a lot of they didn't really focus on that ever. Like ever.
No.
Like I don't ever remember people bring the first time I ever heard about a learning disability was the Cosby Show when they was talking when Theo was
he had dyslexia.
So,
that's generally what happened. I got Theo'd. I got Theo'd in the situation. I think about it. But
yeah, go ahead, Dwayne.
I mean, just to chime in real quick, because I mean, I agree with everybody who's commented here, but I would say for me, and like I don't have kids, but for me, I think the most formative youngest years, like I think Brandon said, they have K through 5. I think to me, I definitely would want my kids, especially then, because of how, man, you know, I just watch my nephew and my nieces and just how they are at those ages, and I really would want it to be somebody look like me that can help them navigate to get to that level. So when they get to 5th grade and then they get out, like just hearing what Brandon said, I felt good for those kids knowing that when they step out into that world, they've been given, I don't know, that blackness or whatever that you got to get to understand to how to navigate this world. And so for me, that's something that I would always want, and that's what I would push for, if anything, definitely in that level, to get it to that level, because I just think we're more compassionate in general. We're just more compassionate, and I think that is just something that's needed to help really all kids. I think if you had us teaching like that to all kids, it would make a difference just in the world. But to our story, I'll just say that I think, you know, a lot of us went through the same school system that was very majority, I would say, and we were all pushed to be into advanced classes. I think Greg, my sister, Mike, we're all, because we're kind of all in that set of parents that were just like, it was a partnership with the school system. We handle the home and then y'all do y'all part too. And if you don't do your part, we'll get it, but we're gonna be in there on you. And my dad was on the school board and everything like that. But even still, I still had a teacher that came at me, and my dad was on the first page of the calendar, and she still had the nerve to come at me. I was like, this lady must be she don't know who I am. I mean, like, you know how it goes down, but I mean, that was an experience where we'd be like, yeah, she don't know who I am. I mean, she like, all right, well, and she rolled up in there, and man, it didn't go too well for her, because once he got up in there, and it was like, she saw who it was. I guess she looked at the calendar and she was like, ooh, oh no, he can do this. Yeah, my dad was like, yeah, I know he can do this. And it was, of all subjects, it was history. Where it was just, I mean, I don't know. Not that history is not a hard thing or anything, but to me, it was she was teaching us history about stuff, and it was just like, I knew that some of that wasn't true, you know what I'm saying? Because of our church teaching us certain things. I mean, we had a thing called A Africa that taught us about ourselves and stuff like that. So it was like, man, this is awesome. You know, I mean, it's like, hold up now. I mean, like, we know this. I mean, so in dealing with things like that, but I'll say for me, being in those formative years, I think it's so important to why they're young and so impressionable. We got to build up that armor in them that early. You know what I'm saying? And I think the compassion that we can give them and to do that, so they don't get beat up until they get in sixth grade, because it's a war zone what we have to come through, and it's just unfortunate it's still like that, unfortunately.
Denise was humming "You About to Lose Your Job" on mute when she heard the story. She's like, "You about to lose your job." I'm gonna let Shanice talk, and then we're gonna go to the guy on the couch. Go ahead, Shanice.
Fortunately, we live in an area where our kids, I don't think they're gonna get a Black teacher or anything like that, just because of where we live and the school that they go to. So I always start the year in prayer, hoping that they don't get the wrong white teacher. You know, I have 2 sons, so I would love for them to have a Black teacher. That way it alleviates that fear. I'm sending them to somebody's class that's going to judge them, you know, before they get to know them. So it will be a great, I can actually breathe if I have a Black teacher or a teacher of color, even that understands, you know, Hispanic teacher. I'm cool with that. Just give me somebody.
Wow.
But yeah, so I would love for our children to come in contact with a Black teacher within their school years, because I know that they're not going to look at them differently and judge them automatically. And having boys is a whole nother playing field when it comes to having them deal with the educational system and the justice system and this and that. So it will alleviate one of those fears that I do have. So and fortunately we have had white teachers. I don't think they have one Asian teacher, but they have white teachers since they started school. And they've been pretty good teachers. So we've been fortunate. And I know it helps to know that, you know, I'm a teacher too. So if they know that I'm a teacher, they treat your kid a little bit differently. Even though I don't want them, because they sugarcoat some things, but at the same time, because you know your child. But if they know that you're an educator or you're a community advocate, they're not going to treat your child differently. So it's important that as parents that we are present, that we are there for our child, and so that they know, so they're not going to automatically assume, oh, this is riffraff from the street, and I'm going to treat riffraff like
from the streets.
And that's a fair play. and they'll treat them differently. So I would love for my child to have a black teacher.
Yeah, you know what they say, they're cute until they're not, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
so there you go. Hey, guy on the couch, what you got for the second question?
All right, question number 2. Are you more or less comfortable with the idea of you or your child having a Black school teacher, or does it not matter? BJ Ellis says, I prefer that my child have a Black teacher at some point in their life. There are certain nuances of everyday life that only another Black person will understand. I never had a Black teacher growing up, but I lived with one. My mom and dad did a lot of teaching at home, so that me and my sister would know our history. Those lessons were some of my favorites, and I wish I could have had that every day for just one calendar year at school. Back to you.
Powerful. Shout out to BJ. Does anybody else have anything to add on to that? If not, I'm going to move on to another plug for the website, which is www.blackadvancement.com. We also have a debates tab. Pretty much the debates tab is made up of this. It's made up of our roundtables from the past. Hopefully we can figure out a way to edit these as well, but we've edited the other ones that we've had in the past, and they've all gone off pretty well. You can go to them and see them on our view them on our YouTube page or under our debates tab at the website. Also, we have recommended websites where basically we recommend other Black-owned businesses that are online. Black Drog Media is one that we're gonna highlight today. So shout out to Jason Ryan, who is doing his thing. And the book that we're gonna highlight from our Book of the Month series for the Black Advancement is Wilmington's Lie: The Murderous Coup of 1898 and the Rise of White Supremacy by David Zucchino. I think is how you say his last name, Zucchino. Wilmington's Lie. Hey, Coney, you're from Carolina. Have you ever heard about the Wilmington thing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because one of the big things about that book was basically that they kept that under lock and key until like the late 90s.
Yeah, I definitely know that I didn't hear about it when I was in school. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was my dad who actually told me about it as well too. So
makes sense to me. All right. But with that said, we're going to go on to the final question for this roundtable, which is, as some of you may know, Black Advancement is really a solutions-oriented organization. Basically, what we try to do for the most part is come up with solutions to these little problems, try to do little things within our lane to be able to help things. So we usually always throw in a question or something to tease the mind to see if we can come up with a solution to problems that we see within the Black community. Which leads us to the third question, which is, what can the Black community do to help Black grade school teachers? And anyone's free to talk.
I think that it's been hit on or discussed already, but I think this is the thing that's the most important is getting involved and staying involved with your kids' education. My schedule personally is busy as I don't know what, but I also go to all of my son's PTA meetings. I go to their school board meetings as well. My son was at my school for 4.5 years. My daughter has been there as well, but it's important to stay as active as you can in your child's education, because if you are going to be your child's biggest advocate, and if you aren't there to advocate for them, nobody else is going to. Doesn't matter if your kid goes to an all-white school, doesn't matter if your kid goes to an all-Black school. If you aren't the one who is there advocating for your child, for their needs, for the things that they need, nobody else is going to do it. And then your child will become a product of the system. And then you'll be sitting back looking down the road or looking back at the road on where things went wrong. And they went wrong because you were not as active as you should have been in your child's life and in your child's education at their school.
Yeah, I'll follow up with him. To me, it's action from the community. I mean, you got to be at school board meetings. You got to be wanting to get appointed to the school board. You got to be at the table. If you're not at the table, you get what you get. So, I mean, for me, see my dad do that, that was inspirational to me to be involved in my community, because I was able to get on planning commissions, which once you learn how the system works and how powerful those positions are and how much influence you can have on your community to help your people, I mean, to me, that's the biggest thing the Black community do to help these teachers, is to get involved at those levels, because without that happening, you don't get more Black teachers hired. You don't get your curriculum changed. You don't get a chance to do a charter school like that Brandon works at, where they direct the curriculum to help alleviate all types of gaps, from blackness to historical to whatever. So to me, the Black community, we have to be involved. I mean, if we're going to work in this system, unless, or if we're going to do more, or unless we're going to want to start doing more charter schools like Brandon and them are doing, I can see that's another avenue to go. But if not, if we're going to work within the system, we got to get involved in the system. You know, that would be my thing from the Black community.
Well, I think that it is not only the responsibility of the Black community. I think that it is the responsibility of the white community as well. They need to work to change some of the things that they created and systemically instilled. But I think also we could also think about perhaps incentivizing Black men to be teachers as well. So when we are thinking about, having Black teachers and all these different things that they do and how they're influential for our community, we don't often think about, is that an important role for a male to play, and what that can do for a child to see that exact same strength and power in that role as a teacher. And that is something that we don't often incentivize, or we don't often tell boys that that is a career path that could be good for them. And I think that that could be a gap as well when thinking about the education of our children also.
Greg, go ahead.
Oh, I was about to ask, what was the root question again? Because I've been so focused listening on everybody. What was the question?
The root question was, what can the Black community do to help Black school teachers?
Oh, yeah. I agree with everything that everyone is saying at this point. The community aspect of it that Dwayne was speaking of is definitely a big part of all that. But one of the main things that everyone can do, and everyone should attempt to do when it comes to Black teachers, is just basically help out and volunteer whenever you can. Teaching is one of the roughest jobs mentally and financially that's out there. I mean, it's a brutal beating. I mean, it can be difficult, especially when you got a kid like I was in your class every day. So just on top, just that alone makes me want to apologize to a lot of people. But I mean, just financially supporting, help out teachers with school supplies, try and be there when they do field trips. Although I think field trips is out this year. I'm pretty sure that's not happening. But just volunteering and standing by these teachers and making sure that they have the financial support that they need to keep their classroom running smoothly. And I guess you could say the spiritual support to know that you appreciate them and love what they're doing. That's something that everyone can do. All the other stuff needs to be done, definitely, but the easiest thing to do and the thing that there's no excuse for not doing are these things that I'm talking about. Those are the things that I think would be most appreciated in the day-to-day function of these Black teachers.
Mike, Daniela, Shanice, whoever wants to go next. You're not you.
I think everyone has, said it all. I mean, you giving all the things that were said, I was going to say, giving the support where you can, providing financially. I mean, one of the things that we do out here is by providing, we do drives to bring materials into the classroom in South LA because it's needed. And those little things of support, but giving your time and your talent is big. I run a mentoring program at one of the high schools out here, and it is a big difference in what we've been able to see in graduation rates just by bringing in outside help. And so I know it works, even when you feel like it's not working, just giving the teacher some time so that they can go and catch up on work while you're teaching the students or interacting with the students. That's so valuable to the teachers. And I just think that figuring out ways to get, if you're working for corporations, getting them to sponsor and come into the school systems to offer opportunities to come into for kids who look different, right? To come in and learn new industries. That's a big thing. And that's something that my company's been working, the company that I work for now is doing a lot in LA to work on creating those partnerships. So anything you can do to support the teachers, particularly Black teachers, we should do all that we can.
And this is why I call on everybody, because like that little tad bit that you just said is something that, you know, I'd never even, not that I hadn't thought of it, but that was something that needed to be said. You know what I mean? About the sponsoring of the schools and all that. That definitely needed to be put out there. So.
I agree with everything everybody's been saying, so I don't have much to add to it.
As I was saying before, maybe not all the time. Okay.
The community can be a big voice. So advocating, like Dwayne said, if you want more Black teachers, go to the board meetings. Go to join your PTA, be a voice, meet with the principal if you don't like the way that things are going, or you think something is not right within the classroom. There's a lot of things that we can do as a community, but it all starts with just speaking out and volunteering and whatever people can contribute would be nice.
Mike, tough task of going last before the guy on the couch, but it's on you.
I'm going to touch more on what Denise said about going to the principal and stuff, because where my kids went to school at, it was just a racial mess. Okay, it was just a mess. They can call it inbound. It was just a mess. So I was going to the principal's office like almost weekly, and even demanded that I spoke to I don't know which position, but people in the Board of Education at the main office. So they came out, and eventually I called the vice principal in a lie. And then, long story short, none of them are there. They now have, because they were saying that they didn't have the tools or the comfort level to deal with this. That came out the principal's mouth. So, and I've demanded that they find somebody that has the tools and the comfort level to deal with this. So they both transferred out, and they now have a Black lady in there, and you just tell the cultural shift that has happened, because I was so adamant on this ain't gonna happen again. Like, you know, my youngest, she ain't going through this, and if it does, them tables will be flipped. You know what I mean? Like, y'all gotta fix this now, because this is ridiculous. And I don't care if you don't have the tools. Find somebody that does. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that goes back to my mom knowing Dr. Albin, who's the superintendent, and being able to go that route and be like, look, Dr. Look, and justify my case. It was a whole mess. It was a whole big ordeal. But you gotta fight the power. You gotta be firm. They'll try to steer you away from the issue. They'll try to say, "Oh, but your kid did this. Oh, but your kid did that." I don't care. Like, this is what's happening. Like, you gotta be strong. You gotta advocate, and you gotta be in those spaces, and you gotta, you know, just gotta do it. You know what I mean? Because if not, you know, then those same teachers, those same principals would have been there, and not the batch of Black kids would have been in there, and they would have had the same racial issues, and the cycle continues. You know what I mean? But you gotta So I went in there and squashed all that. So it's a whole different ball of wax now. So
I gotta ask a follow-up question as far as like, do you know if those people who were principals there, did they do them like the cops and just rehire them in another county or at another school?
No, so the one guy, he just emailed me too. He's now at Ballinger. I don't know if he's at the elementary school or middle school, but he's now at Ballinger. And I have no idea what the other guy was. The other guy was horrible. He was bad. He was real bad. But he's not there no more either. So.
Well, that's a tough one to go to the guy on the couch with afterwards. Guy on the couch, what you got, man?
Wow. Question number 3. What can the Black community do to help Black school teachers? All right. Black Male Sub says the biggest thing the Black community can do to help Black school teachers is to give their time. Give time to volunteer, to help with homework, to go visit their schools and teachers. Time is what our Black school teachers need. Back to you.
Anyone have anything else more to add to the comments from the website? Indeed. Well, with all that being said, I'm going to go into our last plug from the website, which is www.blackadvancement.com. Donations, we are a nonprofit after all. So donations. We have a donations page as well, which actually says what we do with the money that is given and how much money that we've gotten and so on and so forth. Black People You Should Know, which is also a section that we have on our website. The one that we're going to highlight for today's meeting is Ursula Burns, who was born in 1958. She's still alive. Hey, 2020 hasn't gotten all of us. She is the first Black woman CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And last but not least, certainly not least, is solutions. We have a solutions section within our website as well. But solutions are something that, like I said before, and what we're all about and what we try to do. I know it's a little over the top to call it a solution, but I mean, it's our way of trying to mitigate the problems that we see within the Black community. For instance, for the role of education, one of the things that we had been looking at trying to do was doing something where we promote Black males that would become substitute teachers. Because I know, you need certifications to do probably every bit of it. I think it's to substitute now. I think you need more certifications, but something like, being involved in the system at some point in some level, so that kids are able to see you on a more routine basis. So just trying to get more people involved in something like that, creating tutoring sessions, things of that nature. So we're milling around with stuff, with ideas like that, with how we could best do something to combat those type of things. So with all that being said, thank you all to the panelists that came out. It was a fantastic panel. You all were smart and indeed, and said everything that you needed to say that I wouldn't have said myself, Anyway, so with all that, I'm going to say thank you to everybody who can follow us on Facebook at The Black Advancement. They can go to Twitter, and it's at capital BAINC 44. At IG, we're BA_Inc 44, or our website, which we've said several times, www.blackadvancement.com. Until next time, Black people advance. Shout out to Hampton University. Y'all have any shout outs?
I want to say shout out to everybody here who participated. Thank you for taking an active role in education. We couldn't do this without you guys, so I appreciate that. And thank you, Black Advancement, as well, for having us. You're welcome. All right, no matter who.
That's Black Advancement.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. That's great. No. Peace, everybody. I'm gonna stop recording, and we can talk off camera.